God, I have just been having the most incredible day today. I got up, immediately started doing my Ankis, then I started immersing with some Spanish television as well as some music, which for the past 15 minutes I've literally just been dancing around to in my room and singing. And on top of that, an old time friend of mine, I'm talking from years ago, just contacted me out of the blue. Man, I am having the best fucking day. But that's not what this video is about. This video, why is my hair over here doing that? It's so strange when it does that thing where it pops out on one side. Anyway, I've been having the most incredible day. But that's not what this is about. It is about why I stopped playing video games. And the really simple answer to that is that there are better games out there for you to play that actually allow for you to progress in something. And moreover, the video games, all they really do is take time from you. Sure, they might be pleasurable, but the pleasure that is innate to them is entirely hedonistic. It's not a type of pleasure which is conducive to a broader goal, which is advancing you to a better stage in your life. It's time that's being taken up in order to, I don't know, masturbate. That's basically what it is, right? It's an activity which produces nothing. At the very least, as hedonistic as choosing to make these videos and talking about these subjects is, at the very least, this achieves something in the sense that it can provide information or entertainment or understanding to other people, potentially. That's the goal. I hope it does that. But, at this point, this right here is the most hedonistic thing I do. Before that, it was playing video games. Now I don't even do that. I cannot justify the loss of time to myself. I tried playing Bayonetta recently, and I could not even get past the first stage without having that little guy in the back of my head saying, I could be doing more immersion right now. I could be doing grammar drills. I could be writing poetry in Spanish. I could be having conversations with myself. I could be listening to music. I could be watching a show and trying to pick out the words that I don't know, doing listening and reading. I could be doing any of these things. Vocabulary drills, of course. And instead of doing that, I'm just sitting here basically playing with myself, and I'm not enjoying this even one moment, even one bit. That was the weirdest thing to me, realizing that this kind of false progression, this false feeling of progression you get from playing a video game, is actually a lot less satisfying than doing a real thing with your time. If I were to sit here and practice the guitar, I'd be doing something that actually feels like something. But with a video game, sure, you might feel like you're progressing, you might have a sense that you're getting better at something, but it's all synthetic. It's all entirely designed by the creators in order to elicit that feeling, in the same way that a drug is designed to elicit that feeling. But then, you start coming down from it, or sometimes even when you're in the middle of it, and you feel like, oh my god, this is not what I want to be doing with myself. Why am I wasting my time in this way? And it's wild to me, right? The ability for our minds to be tricked, the extent to which these things can trick our minds into making us feel like we're actually doing something when we're doing nothing. And I think once you become cognizant of that, you can't really unsee it. You can't really unsee all of the incentive structures innate to these games, all of the little tricks that they do to try and pull on your heartstrings and mess with your mind. And then you realize, oh shit, I could be getting so much more fun and satisfaction out of progressing in something that actually feels real. If I'm getting better at Spanish, that is a measurable thing that I can demonstrate. And even when you can't demonstrate it, even when it seems like you're not really making progress, if you're aware of how language acquisition works, you quickly recognize that the passive acquisition that you're receiving from the content that you're consuming is going to build up over time until one day it activates and then it becomes active. And so, like, why would I take less time for immersion when I could just have more immersion? It doesn't make sense to me, right? Even if I want to do something pleasurable in a more hedonistic sense, like watching anime, I can just watch anime with the Spanish subtitles or with the Spanish dub. And so it's like there is so much content and so many different opportunities which are available to me that, like, literally every single thing that I do is a study opportunity and can be a study opportunity. Even just watching YouTube. You think I watch very many English language YouTube channels anymore? If I do, what I'll do is put the Spanish subtitles on the video and then just read them as I'm listening to them talk. But in general, I've got all Spanish music I'm listening to. I've got all Spanish YouTubers that I'm watching and listening to, podcasts, etc. And it puts me in this fascinating state of mind where it's like I can literally be fluent in this language. Like, I'm not right now, but I can be. Like, I feel the building blocks building around me, all the different things getting set into motion, and it's like, oh my god, I can do this. I see the progress that I'm making, the new things that I learn, that passive vocabulary becoming active vocabulary, and it's like, it's wild, right? It's this incredibly euphoric kind of feeling, which I've gotten, since June when I started my all Spanish all the time journey. And yeah. It like I don't mess around with this shit. I don't know if you can see this, but on my fucking, no, you can't see it. On my telephone here. Can you see it? No, you can't. Well, my telephone is in Spanish. My phone is in Spanish. My motherfucking computer is in Spanish. Literally all of my electronics. Sadly, not my watch, because it's not possible. Also, I installed this application, right? That you literally can't see it, but I installed this application which makes it to where you don't have all the distractions on the home screen. You can just directly go to your apps and search through them, which kind of helps keep me from getting distracted. Also, yeah, that's news. I went back to using this just a couple days ago because I found that using a smartphone to study is like you can't put a value on it, right? Like, it's an invaluable asset because you can bring Anki literally anywhere you go. Audiobooks, ebooks, any kind of content that you would need to study with, you can bring that with you everywhere at all times. And prior to that, like, I was just ripping audio off the internet and loading it onto like MP3 players and the dumb phone and these sort of things, and it was really inefficient. But with this, it's like I have access to the Spanish internet. I have Google Translate, dictionaries. I mean, I have physical dictionaries as well, but I have every piece of content that I could ever need right at my fingertips. And I feel like that brings me to like a more interesting philosophical question that I've been thinking about recently. Like, why is it that in the face of so much information, right, when we have access to tools which are more powerful than anything we've ever had before, why is it that we use those things to make ourselves dumber, right? I mean, look at so many of the people that are alive today, frankly. I was going to say in this generation, but it's like everybody now. How do they use their phone? How do they use their computer? They go on social media and they consume mind-numbing content which doesn't challenge them in any way, only serves to reinforce pre-existing beliefs they have about the world, or otherwise sell them something or try to control their mind in some way. Why is it that people are using these devices, which have access, unparalleled access to information, unparalleled by any time period or tool in history? Why are they doing this? Now, I don't have an answer to that question, but it's something I've thought about, because it's like, if you need a textbook, you can go on, maybe YouTube won't like it that I say this, but I'm not encouraging you to do this. There's a website. I actually, I won't say what the website is, but there is a website where you can download any book in pretty much any language in the world. It's got an important part of the Bible, like kind of the beginning, if you catch my drift, in the name. Also, very reminiscent of a certain Sega 16-bit console. It's got it in the name. But on that website, you can download any book, EPUBs, whatever. If you can't read those, convert it to a PDF. You got tools online to do that. There's I guess I can say this one. I don't think YouTube will care if I mention this. There's Sci-Hub, where people upload, academic articles and studies of all sorts that you can easily access if they're behind a paywall. And for stuff that isn't on Sci-Hub, very oftentimes you can actually email the researchers and ask them for their research so that you can read it. And if you email nicely, 9 times out of 10, at least in my experience, they will hand you the PDF. Like, they'll just give you the file for you to read. And so we have unparalleled access to information, right? And people are using it to make themselves retarded. When, like, literally right now, you can download Anki, you can download all kinds of decks that people have made based on audio content that they've ripped from Pimsleur and Asimil and all these, like, paid programs that you normally need to buy the CDs and the workbooks for. Plenty of people have just ripped it and made decks out of that content, and you can use a spaced repetition system, mnemonics with the story method, or photos as well, to kind of associate the words with a specific image or situation, and just drill vocabulary that way. You can narrate your day based on the vocabulary that you've learned, right? Say you're going to the store and some of the numbers and some of the names for food. Write down your list, physically write it down with the vocabulary that you have. All of these things, can serve to make you a more worldly person, someone who can communicate with more of the world, empathize and understand more of its people, empathize with and understand more of its people. But people aren't doing that, right? People are not seeing the time that they have for how valuable it is, and trying to make the absolute most out of every hour that they have. Instead, they're just kind of rotting and wallowing in misery. And I look at that and I think, well, it's no wonder that we have a depression epidemic right now. Diseases of despair running rampant. You have tons of people completely isolated, and their minds are hungry for knowledge and desire challenges. They want to be stimulated, but they're not being stimulated. They're being lulled into a state of false consciousness by drugs, literal drugs, and drugs in the more abstract sense, like video games and TikTok and all of these things. And it's like leading us into this direction in society where, like, we're just becoming more and more asocial and unempathetic and tired and bored and sad. I know I'm making a lot of generalizations right now. I generally don't like doing that, but I think in this case it bears out, even as literacy rates continue to improve, you also have people in general reading far fewer books than ever before. And it's because, or young people in general, I should say, and it's because of this bizarre attention economy which has been built on the internet. Uh, People say that it started with Twitter or Vine and this sort of thing, but you could argue that the fast-paced nature of many video games and the constant content which is being served to you in that medium was the prerequisite for many of these other, dopaminergic social media sites, right, that gamify communication and information. I think that sets a terrible precedent. It isn't to say that, video games are bad in all instances, or that, they're not a legitimate art form that should be consumed and respected. I mean, hey, I love Spec Ops The Line. It's my favorite game of all time. That is a game that I thought about literally for months after finishing it because it was such an incredible work of art. One of the best things ever made, and it could have only been done in video games. You could say the same thing, albeit not anywhere near to the same extent, about certain entries in the Metal Gear Solid series and other games which have good stories. But even though I respect it as a medium and I think it's good in moderation, at least for me, like at this stage in my life, I don't want to play any video games. And it's like I look at all these games that I've collected, all these consoles, and I could tell you everything about each one of them. I could tell you the developers who worked on them, like the history of the companies, not the individual people. I could tell you about how well each of the consoles sold and the companies involved. I could tell you what the games in that library say about that console. I could tell you the price of each of these games and how it's fluctuated and changed over time. But do I play many games nowadays? No, I never do. And so I look at all this stuff and I appreciate the joy that it's brought to me, especially during times when I was suicidal and alone. I think escaping into video games to an extent helped me get out of those places. But also at the same time, I feel like I'm at a point in my life now where I absolutely do not need that, because I can just escape into something which feels more meaningful and more satisfactory regardless of how I'm feeling. If I'm sad, if I'm tired, if I'm grumpy, I always have language learning and I can always do more of it. And so why do I need all this? Why would I need all this? The answer is I don't. And some of this stuff has sentimental value to me, but it doesn't necessarily have to, right? We choose what we put sentimental value into. And so, I look at all this stuff and I'm like, I should make some videos about some of these games. I should go through the collection, show it off just to have it as an archive on the internet and sell it all off, Sell it to the highest bidder and put that money in savings to go travel the world, but especially the Spanish-speaking world, and get some communication and some, down-to-earth conversations with people in. And the value of experiences like that, you can't even put a monetary number on, right? Those are going to be things that you remember for the rest of your life. And many of these games I will remember for the rest of my life as well, but I have them in my memory. I don't need to hold on to the physical item forever. And so, that in a nutshell is why I stopped playing video games. As much as I appreciate the medium, and as much as it has been incredibly positive for me in my life, I also see how it can get in the way of progress. And when you have an obstacle to progress in front of you, I think the only logical or rational thing to do is to move it aside and then walk straight on through to your destination. And that's what I'm trying to do now. That's what I'm successfully doing right now. And so, if there's one lesson that you can take from this video, if you feel like you're being distracted by the world around you, if you feel like you can't lock in, it would be to be consistent. Start small at first, build it up over time, and quickly you will find yourself immersed in the many passions and emotions elicited by your target language. Because learning a language is not just it's not just learning vocabulary, it's not just speaking. It is a multifaceted dance of sounds and cultural contexts and art and music and communication, not just verbally but also more subtly, to the heart. And I think by seeing it as this all-encompassing sort of thing, as a language of a culture rather than a language in and of itself, then you can start to develop a deeper appreciation for the work that you're actually doing. You can start to lock in to the point where it becomes your entire life, right? In the same way that, well, I wouldn't say video games were my entire life, but they were a pretty big aspect of my life, right? But I found a much better game, and I found a game which is much more productive.